and welcome back to my channel where I'm revisiting some of my earlier class-related videos. Within this video, we will be advancing our character of the Barbarian class that we created in the previous video. And I will attempt to cover as many levels as I can fit into a 20 or so minute video and then cover the remainder in a follow-up video. And to help with that, the more recent versions of Fantasy Grounds Unity include a more polished off character wizard that will allow you to more easily level up a given character for a given class. Additionally, because of this, many of the features will now be added automatically, although they won't necessarily be completely set up in relation to your character's action sheet. That is something that we should still review as we go through each level. However, it does still reduce the overall workload of advancing our character because some of that work is done for us and we don't really need to worry about too much of it. We just need to review what we get, make sure that it's configured appropriately, and then we're good. Before I begin the process of advancing our character level, there are two things that I would like to point out. First, the number of rages that our character is going to gain is not automatically going to increase through this leveling process. We're going to have to review the table ourselves and determine if the level that we have just acquired actually increments the number of rages that our character is going to gain. Additionally, if there happens to be a particular feature or trait, which in this case the Stone's Endurance is, that works off of the number of proficiency points your character has for the total number of uses, you will also have to review those to ensure that you increase the number of uses that that particular feature has, because once again, the character wizard is still not going to handle that for you. Beyond that, we should be able to advance our character level, review the new features that our character has gained, make sure they're configured right. Usually we won't have to actually adjust anything, but there are a few things that we will have to do, and then polish off any changes that we have to deal with. So the first thing I will do is begin advancing our character to level 2. We are currently level 1. All we have to do is click this level up button here, and that is going to open up the character wizard for us. Additionally, it's going to close our character sheet behind the scenes because once we hit this commit button, it is going to save those changes to the character sheet and then recreate it. Before we move on with the actual level increase, take a quick note as to the features that you have here. And this is something you're going to want to do each time because you're going to want to be aware of any new features or adjustments that happen here. Beyond that, let's see what happens when we advance our character to level 2. As soon as we do that, we can see that Danger Sense and Reckless Attack have now appeared on our features listing. Nothing else is going to change for this particular level, as that is the only thing that we gain. So I'm going to go ahead and just simply hit the commit button. As soon as we do that, it's going to recreate our character sheet. Although this time, our character is now level 2. If there's a proficiency bonus increase, that will now be in place. If there's any increases to our stats down here because of that proficiency increase, those will also increase for our saving throws. Our ability scores, if there happen to be any adjustments, will also see the adjustments made at the time that the new character sheet is created. And I'll show you what that looks like once we gain an ability score improvement. Other things that are going to happen is that we're going to have an increase in our total number of hit points, which I'll explain in a second. And our new features are going to be added to our character sheet. So if we look in our ability scores here, or tab I should say, we should see that we now have Reckless Attack and Danger Sense, which we do. I'm simply going to open these for now because before I get into that, I want to explain what happens in relation to our character's hit points. When you use the character wizard to advance your level, it is going to use an average in relation to your total number of hit points that your character is going to gain. And that is the average that is defined by the player's handbook. And it's going to be unique to your particular class. Having said that though, you will still gain your character's constitution bonus as part of the score increase. And as a quick calculation, generally the way that the average hit points works is that it takes your hit die, which in this case is a d12, divides it by 2, adds 1, and then you gain your total number of constitution bonus points to it. So that's why we got 10 points. Of the two new features that our character gains, I'm going to review Danger Sense first. The Danger Sense feature is going to give your character the ability to gain advantage when dealing with dexterity-based saving throws. However, in order for your character to gain this advantage, they can't be blinded, deafened, or incapacitated. That means that because there is an effect that has to be applied to your character, you want to make sure it's in your Actions tab. And in our case, it is. We can see that it is right here. As part of this particular setup, it's already got the effect in place. It's going to be Danger Sense. We're gaining advantage on a dexterity-based saving throw. It's going to be applicable to an action that is occurring, and it's only going to be something that gets tied to your character. So what is that going to look like? Well, let's go ahead and show you a specifically configured combat scenario here And even though I'm using an adult green dragon, chances are a level 2 barbarian is not going to run into one of these at this particular point in time, but I'm using it to showcase the dexterity-based saving throw. Now, the green dragon is set up to make an attack against our character. They're going to force us to make a dexterity-based saving throw. So what we want to do is make sure that this effect is on our character before the green dragon makes their forced dexterity saving throw. Now, when they do that, you'll see that we have 2 dice that get rolled. And in this particular case, it doesn't help us because the DC is extremely high. Now, in this particular case, the lowest value was dropped. We rolled a 9 and a 12. Unfortunately, we don't gain any bonuses because our dexterity has no bonus increase here. In this case, we're going to fail, which means we're most likely dead because there's a total of, let's see here. Actually, no, this one's not too bad. It's a wing-based attack, so they might be able to survive this. And the same thing is applicable to something like a trap. If your character's walking through a particular area on a map, and then all of a sudden the DM calls for a dexterity-based saving throw, you get to apply that advantage, make your roll, and you're good to go. This isn't something that's going to consume an action. This isn't something that is going to consume a reaction. It's only going to come into play when you're asked to make a dexterity-based saving throw. The last thing that I want to point out about Danger Sense is that there is a reason why this action element is here, meaning that it's going to expire after a roll in relation to something that's incoming towards your character. There are going to be times when your character is going to be required to make a dexterity-based saving throw that isn't necessarily going to trigger an effect. This sense, or this Danger Sense feature here, is specific to things that are going to trigger an effect that's going to land on your character, not when you're just simply avoiding something that might not have an effect. So that's the reason why this is set to expire after a roll and why it's not something that's always going to be permanently assigned to your character. With respect to Reckless Attack, this feature is giving you advantage when your character is making an attack against another target. However, it's specifically on a target that you've chosen at the start of your turn. So if you have 2 attacks, it's only going to apply to your first attack. However, for the remaining duration of your turn, your character is also going to give anyone who attacks your character advantage. And luckily for us, Reckless Attack is already set up. It's giving us advantage on any melee-based attack, so you're going to want to be careful here because this is only applicable to any attack you make that utilizes your strength modifiers. So in this case, +4. That means that you're going to want to double-check your weapons to ensure that they are utilizing your strength-based bonuses, and that's going to be mostly restricted to martial weapons, but not all. It is also not going to be applicable to anything that happens to have a thrown or a range-based property on it. So you're going to want to be careful there. Additionally, the ability to grant advantage on an incoming attack is already configured for us, so we don't have to worry about that. And you'll note here that it has no modifier. It's not melee or range-based, and that's because it's applicable to both. There is no restriction that states it has to be an incoming melee-based attack in relation to granting that particular target advantage on you. It also is set up to expire after 1 round, and that's because this only is going to last until the end of your turn. That means that if you want to make another attack and you choose to activate Reckless Attack again in the next round, you can do so. And that's because there is no usage limitation here. You are restricted to your first attack for each turn, and that's key. It's for each turn. That means that you get to use this on every single turn if you choose to do so. So I've gone ahead and set up our Barbarian here so that it can attack the adult green dragon here. What's going to happen is that I'm going to choose to make a Reckless Attack. I do that by applying this effect, and we can see that everything is here. I'm then going to go ahead and make my attack roll. And in this particular case, I got lucky. I managed to get a hit, so I'm going to go ahead and roll my damage. Perfect. But now here's the problem, and that is that every single one of these creatures here on the battlefield now has advantage whenever they attack your character. So if I go ahead and advance the turn, the adult green dragon, if they happen to make their attack roll, is also going to gain advantage. You can see that there are 2 dice here. And obviously, oh geez, that's a critical hit. Well, our character is dead. But in any event, you can see that Reckless Attack does have its disadvantage. And it's primarily because we're essentially opening up our character to incoming attacks because we're being very reckless, if you'll excuse the term there, in our own attacks. We're trying to be as active in combat as we can, and we're not caring about whether we get hit as part of that process. That's essentially what it comes down to. So let's go ahead and advance our character to level 3. When we do this, it's going to trigger our selection of the class specialization. And in this case, I'm just going to go with this because I'm not going to be covering that as part of this particular video. There's nothing else that we have to do here either, and that is simply because it's only the class specialization that we're gaining at level 3. There is a new feature that is here, but this is going to be specific to our class specialization, so I will not be covering that in this video. However, I will link you to the video where I do cover that feature. At level 3, our character does increase the number of rage usages that we have. So we're going to want to make sure that we click this, go to preparation, and increase this 2 to a 3. And that'll increase the total number of rages that we have available to us. So let's go ahead and move our character to level 4. As soon as I do that, I'm going to gain our ability score improvement selection. And those of you who are familiar with 5th edition will know that you either get to increase an ability score or you get to choose a feat. And when it comes to increasing the ability scores, you have 2 choices there as well. You can select one ability, whether it's strength, dexterity, or whatever, and increase that particular ability by 2 points, or you can select 2 and increase each of them by 1 point. It's entirely up to you. At this level, I'm going to go ahead and show you what the ability score increase is going to look like, because generally that's going to happen first. Sometimes if someone will select a feat at this particular level, and that's perfectly fine. You'll see it when we hit level 8 for this particular character, so if you want to jump ahead to that, go ahead. Once I select the ASI button here, what's going to happen is it's simply going to disappear and our selection is going to be noted. What you then have to do is go to your stats page here and then choose the ability scores that you want to increase. If you simply select 1, then that 1 is going to gain 2 points. So if I simply select strength, you can see that it went from 18 to 20 points. If I choose to select a second one, this will revert to 19 points, and then whatever ability score I choose is going to increase by 1. In this case, I just want to increase my strength up to a strength of 20. We're not gaining a feat, so I'm going to go ahead and commit this, and we'll also note that we do not gain any other features at this particular level. So let's go ahead and advance our character to level 5. Once again, as soon as I advance this particular character to level 5, we will see that there are some additional features that are coming into play. Nothing else is going to be modified here. And when it comes to melee-based characters, generally it's this simple. So I've now gone ahead, saved our character. We are now level 5. We've had all of our hit point increases and all that. Let's go ahead and review the features. So one of the features that we have gained as part of our particular character at level 5 is our proficiency bonus has gone up. And yes, I classify that as a feature increase. Our saving throws are all going up. Our skills are gaining an increase if we're proficient in that particular skill. So you can see here that our athletics is now a +8 in relation to its roll. We will also want to ensure that if there's any traits that take advantage of that proficiency bonus in relation to the number of uses, that we increase those. So in this case, Stone's Endurance does. And admittedly, that's a race-based trait in this particular case, or species-based trait, I should say. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust this so that we have that configured to now match our proficiency score. But you may have noticed nothing else has changed in relation to our action sheet. So why is that? Well, we'll want to quickly pop these open. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that open as well as fast movement. And I'm going to take a look at extra attack first. Starting at level 5, what you used to get as a single attack, you now gain the ability to make a second attack. So whenever you take an attack action, and that's an attack action with a capital A, and that is key, you gain the ability to attack twice. If you happen to see a discussion point where it is talking about an attack action, but that attack action happens to have a lowercase a, then the extra attack modifier doesn't come into play. So you want to make sure that it is applicable to only a capital A based increase in your attacks. Now, under a normal combat-based scenario, what that means is that as you take an attack action, or as you choose to make an attack action as part of your character's action phase, you get to attack twice with the battle axe, twice with the javelin, twice with the spear. It also means you get to throw 2 javelins or throw 2 spears if you happen to have 2 of them on hand. It doesn't have a restriction that indicates whether it's a melee or range-based attack, so it means that you gain the ability to take an extra attack in both of those particular cases. You could even throw rocks twice if you wish to do so. What it doesn't mean, though, is that when you take a bonus action, and let's say that that particular bonus action is giving you the ability to make another attack action, if the attack is a lowercase a, you only get to attack once. You don't get your second attack with that particular action. However, if the bonus action utilizes, and it explicitly utilizes, a capital A in relation to the attack action, then you would gain the ability to attack twice as part of that action. Additionally, if the bonus action is explicitly stating that you're gaining an additional action, you would be able to make the ability of this extra attack, so you could theoretically attack 4 times in that turn. Now, the perfect example of that would be the fighter's action surge feature. Unfortunately, the Barbarian doesn't gain that. However, what it does allow that fighter to do is they get a free action as part of the usage of that feature. And what that means is that they gain the ability to execute a full attack action because they're gaining an action. It's not restricting what that action is. In relation to the fast movement feature, what's happening here is that your character is gaining the ability to move an additional feet during your turn as long as your character isn't wearing heavy armor. What that means is that your character can wear light or medium armor and still gain this bonus. However, if your character happens to have a feature that allows them to move further as long as your character is not actually wearing any armor, then you would lose those modifiers, but you would still gain these as long as you weren't wearing heavy armor. In this character's case, our character is not wearing armor. There's no armor in this character's listing of their inventory, neither is it equipped. So all we have to do is go back to our character's main action sheet here and add in a miscellaneous, if you will, movement bonus. And that will give our character 40 feet of total movement. The reason why the character wizard doesn't yet make that adjustment is it right now doesn't have the ability to detect if your character has armor in their inventory, or if it is there, whether it is worn or not. So you'll want to go through and make sure that you make that adjustment. So let's go ahead and advance our character to level 6. And we're really only going to gain one thing that we can do in relation to this particular video, and that is that we are going to be increasing the total number of rages that we have. So we're going to increase this from 3 to 4. Even though we did gain a path-specific feature, once again, I'm not covering that path in this video. This is literally just the Barbarian-based class. And the idea is that you would use this video in conjunction with another video specific to the class specialization to be able to explain how to go through and set up these configurations. So let's go ahead and advance our character to level 7. And we will be gaining a feature in this particular case, Feral Instinct. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Feral Instinct has a couple of interesting properties. The first is that your character is now gaining a permanent advantage on any initiative rolls that are being made. And the second interesting property is that when your character is surprised during the first round of a combat scenario, as long as your character isn't incapacitated, they won't be surprised. They'll still be able to attack as normal, as long as your character enters rage during that particular round. The way that would work is that the Dungeon Master would go ahead and roll the initiative rolls of all of the NPCs that are gaining the surprise attack. At the same time, your character also gains the ability to make an initiative roll, and you would execute your character's turn as part of that first combat round. All the rest of the party members would have to wait till the next round before they could actually do anything. And while the second portion of this isn't something that we're going to make use of in relation to a specific action per se, the first part of it is, in the sense that we have to have an effect associated with our character to be able to gain advantage on that initiative roll. Well, the good news for us is that it is set up. You're going to want to adjust this because, ADV, there we go. Because that lowercase I is actually going to break the rules. It's not going to pick up that you're gaining advantage on that. And I don't think you need the semicolon there either. But let's go ahead and give this a shot. As soon as the character is added to the combat tracker, you're going to want to click this effect. Now that that is there, you're going to be able to make an initiative roll here with advantage. Excellent. So we almost rolled a 1 and a 20, but the good thing is we rolled a 20. So that means that anytime our character now has to make an initiative roll, they're going to roll 2 dice and then pick the higher of the 2. It is not going to guarantee that you'll be at the top of the order, but what it will do is it will almost guarantee that you won't be at the bottom, because the chances of rolling 2 1s are low. It is possible to do, but they are low. At level 8, our character is going to gain their next ability score improvement, and in this particular case, I'm going to go ahead and choose a feat. And the reason why is I've already showcased how this part works. I want to showcase how feat selection works. It really doesn't matter how you select this, but what you're going to want to do is select a feature that is applicable to your character. Now, in this particular case, I'm just simply going to go ahead and choose Weapons Master for the time being, and make sure that Strength is the one that I have chosen. Now, I did that intentionally because I want you to see something. There is an issue in relation to the combat tracker. We already had a score of 20, but unfortunately, it's not picking up that this isn't allowed to go past 20. So we're still given the option to choose Strength as part of that process. You're going to want to double check this before you commit something. In this particular case, our only choice is to choose Dexterity, which is actually going to benefit our character anyway. But that's something that you're going to want to keep an eye out for when it comes down to things like this that have a restriction of a maximum level associated with them. However, that's everything that we can do in relation to this character at this time. So I'm going to go ahead and commit this. And then I'm going to take a look at this particular portion of the feature. Unfortunately for our character, there is a little bit of an issue here. We are already proficient in relation to martial weapons and simple weapons, which means that we are proficient in all of the martial weapons and all of the simple weapons. So this is something that isn't anything we can gain any benefit from because we're already proficient with all of those weapons. It also means that you're not gaining double proficiency with those weapons. So this is something that you could potentially try to convince your dungeon master into considering, but unfortunately that's not how it works with the rules of 5th edition. As we are close to level 10, even though the video's gone a little bit longer, I'm going to go ahead and continue on until we hit level 10. So we're at level 8 now. I'm going to go ahead and increase our character to level 9. We are going to gain Brutal Critical, and there's something that I'm going to want to point out specific to this. But everything else, we just want to make sure that there's nothing there that's going to be added, and then we're good to go. At level 9, we are gaining an increase in our proficiency bonus. This means that if we have any feats or features that are set up to use proficiency when it comes to the number of uses that we have, we need to ensure that we increase those. And in this case, our trait for the Goliath has that limitation. So I want to go ahead and just increase that to 4. I'm going to minimize that because it's not applicable. The other thing that has happened is that we have gained Brutal Critical. And the Brutal Critical feature has a little bit of an adjustment that's going to come into play. First off, we are gaining additional damage with whatever weapon we happen to be using. So that means that if our weapon does a D8 of damage, we're gaining an additional D8 of damage as part of that dice roll. If it does D6, however, it's only gaining a D6. If it has a D4 or D12, then it's gaining a D4 or a D12. So the amount of damage that weapon does is going to dictate the amount of damage that is going to show up in this effect here. Unfortunately, it is also wrong. We have not hit level 17 yet, which means we have not gained our 3rd D8 in relation to the total amount of damage that our character is going to do. We will want to ensure that we simply modify that and reduce that down to the correct number of dice, which in this case is a single die. The other factor is that this is only going to be applicable whenever your character rolls a critical on their attack roll. That's the reason why there's a comma critical here, because it means that you can throw this onto your character, but it's only going to trigger as soon as you make a critical attack. And this feature does have additional increases at level 13 and at level 17, which we will get to in our next video, most likely. So how does this actually work? Well, I was going to off-screen go ahead and try to roll a critical hit. Luckily, my first roll actually did it. I don't know how, but it did. What this now means is that I can attach this effect to our character because I've rolled a critical-based roll here when it comes to our attack roll, which also means that I can now do the damage to it. And you will see that there's an additional die that comes into play. Now, I've already rolled a critical attack, so generally that would be 2d8 that would get applied. In this particular case, it's a total of 3 because the addition of the d8 in relation to this particular effect here now comes into play. You'll also notice that it didn't go away, and I'll show you why. This is essentially a permanent change because we can make another attack here on our dragon, and as long as it isn't critical and we do damage, we're only going to do the single die of damage because the critical keyword here is not triggered. So as soon as your character is added to the combat tracker, you can add this and not have to worry about it applying to all of your attack rolls. It'll only come into play in relation to your critical based attacks, and it will already be there and ready to go. Hence the reason why it doesn't have an expiration. Also at level 9, we are gaining an increase in our rage damage. And what this means is that we have to go through and ensure that the amount of damage we do in relation to when rage is active is increased by 1 point. So I'm going to simply go ahead and adjust this so that it is a 3. And that's all we have to do in relation to that rage effect. And the final level we are going to gain today is level 10. And this is giving us our intimidating presence feature. And there's no additional stats or adjustments that come through from this particular leveling up, if you will. However, in relation to intimidating presence, that is a path feature. So it's not something that I'm going to be covering in this particular video. And nothing else changes in relation to our character with respect to level 10. It's a very simple level to deal with. So at this point, we are done in relation to how far I'm going to take this character today. In our next video, what we will do is we will take this character from level 11 all the way through to level 20 and run through any base barbarian features that come through and point out any adjustments that you're going to have to go through and make. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.